more.
Live streaming is on.
We are basing
Sorry for that.
this. Yes. we are basing the common simulator in a moment in time in which it's not so far in the future, but it's enough far to let our imagination go away, and we can think on a moment in which climate change is a bit hard and we don't have as much energy as we have right now. So because fuels are very, very expensive, so it is a bit difficult to move all the things that at the moment we are moving around, because everything in cities comes from somewhere else, and it is fuel that it's used to bring things from one place to another. So in that future, we have to think about much more local providers, and we probably don't want to build big cities. We probably want to go to places in which we have near grounds in which we can plant things in the most efficient way, in which we can not eat, but without so much effort too, because we have the technology that, and also nature grows itself. It's like not doing agriculture in the way that we do it right now, letting nature go and knowing how it works. So, and by the way, in that future that we can imagine, that we don't really need at the moment, but in few years probably we might want to have thought about that future, because it's free to think right now. Maybe in the future it's something that we will need. And in many places right now in the world, those ideas, I think that are still very important. I mean, maybe it's not our case, but for many people, having a sustainable way to live, it's the most important. It's a question of life or death. And the thing is that how we can use Commons Stack in the future for gathering communities together, fund things in a community way, and survive in some way, or doing cool things. In that future, we will be kind of a bit more advanced than now, and also with all the global challenges that we will have. I think that it can be a lot more engaging than doing boring stuff today, like, I don't know, whatever we can do today. Thinking in that future that is challenging and at the same time much more people is kind of engaged with nature and all that stuff. So the basic idea is that the basic narrative is Solarpunk, and then we have storylines, different storylines that build on top of that world that we can think together. Also, for sure, there are a lot of Solarpunk literature, which I can share in the group. And we also have Solarpunk book club in another Telegram group. So if you want to join, tell me and I add you in the group. And there are some anthologies in which they compile some of the Solarpunk short stories that are out there. And if you're interested, please tell me and I add you in the group. And that's all. I don't know if it was 5 minutes or more.
A little more. That's okay. Does anyone have any questions about Solarpunk or any ideas?
I'll just jump in as usual. I think it's amazing to really have a vision that's positive instead of warning people and making people worry about the commons and all that kind of stuff. I think you bring them along by showing them a better view, and I think that's really, really important. So I love the idea. The one concern I might have is you get like super hyped. Like right now, I'm like super hyped. Like everything's going to be solar punk and it's all going to be fantastic. So you have to kind of temper that hype cycle thing, right? And show people how you can practically do things like engineer a better world. You have to show them by actually engineering the thing as well and making it work and showing them working examples of solar punk like things. You know, look at this city here; they're doing solar punk kind of things. I think it's an amazing idea.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, it's not a naive idea. It's a very difficult idea. I mean, we know the alternative. The alternative is having corporations that spy on us, and we are already in a cyberpunk world. And the alternative is very difficult, and we have to think about it, do fiction about it, and think about the ways in which, as communities and decentralized technologies, we can build those things. And I think that Commons Stack is also
And Fabio, Fabio, I saw you were unmuting. Did you have anything to add to this?
Yeah, I was asking for a clarification if the group is just about sharing literature, or is there any actual, let's call it workspace, where you guys meet and try to get things going? Or
it is a pretty new group, and at the moment we are only sharing literature. But there are the people who is in the group is building cool stuff. And pretty much probably in the future we are not only going to read, we are also going to build interesting things, for sure.
Hopefully the Common Stack Simulator is the first.
Yeah.
And okay, well let's keep this party going then, and I think it rolls pretty well into the narrative. Do you want to take it away on the narrative, Sam?
Yes, we promised that the person who donates more to the Gitcoin grant will propose the first narrative. And I don't know who that person is, but we probably would like to ask her.
Last I checked, it was Danny. And Danny, we are good friends with, so we can. I think the thing ends today.
We ask her.
So
what he would like to. It's not something for right now, but in the next session, we could think about that narrative, and she might want to help us. The idea is that narrative should be applicable right now and in 30 years from now, because this is going to happen 30 years from now, and it can be anything that is a commons.
Yeah, I'm sure she'll be down. I'm just scanning to see if there's anyone else who competes.
And then we will need a team to work on that narrative in conjunction with the other teams. I mean, maybe it's not a team, maybe it's people that thinks on it, but can be in the other tracks too. But who would like to work on the narratives, guys?
Me.
Anyone else?
I think we'll have the comms team isn't very well represented in this call because it's generally a dev call, but I don't think we'll have any shortage of help from the comms team. This is Jeff, Vesta, Chris, and I assume Danny as well. She writes blog posts and she's got time on her hands as well. So
okay, as you know, in maybe it is changed by the design team, but at the moment in the MVP there is it is divided in different parts in which you are building the hats, the bonding curve, and the conviction voting, and in each part you have some text at the right of the page. So we have space there in which we can explain what you are building at each point. And maybe in that text you can have illustrations, and you can have some narrative related to each comment that you are building. So you should engage with the design team to see if that has sense with a narrative, and then with the development team to see how everything fits. We still
it's going to be exciting with the narrative because it's almost going to be like Mad Libs, right? We're going to have like the same phrases a lot of the time, and then like blanks that need to be filled in for each different narrative. At least this is how I imagine it. I also imagine that we'll need to set some character limits, but I don't think we need to have those restrictions for the first narrative. The first narrative, we can like figure out what we want to say, and then once we have the first narrative, we can kind of adapt it so that figure out which pieces and parts we need to take out, what the character limit is, and if we just make sure the first narrative fits on the page really well and follow suit, then we can force the other narratives to follow the first narrative.
Mm-hmm.
This is my thought on how we would attack that problem. I don't know.
I also have pending to check out all the things that we have in the technical part, because I have been looking at libraries that gives you names, random names and random images of people, which is very interesting because we can have kind of real people in the simulation, which are not real, but it seems, and you can choose also regions. So, for example, we can have a commons in Brazil in which everyone is Brazilian, and we can have a commons which is global, and you can have people from everywhere. So you can choose in its narrative where it is based on. So this is something that it is important to say that it's possible from the technical perspective. And also there are other things that can be interesting, but I'm still gathering all the information that it is still in a very early stage. I am reading about D3. The D3 library, which is a data visualization library in JavaScript, that is going to be amazing if we do all the things that it allows us to do. I mean, instead of having Python generated graphics, we can have interactive graphics with that library, actually.
I can maybe quickly, sorry, can just maybe quickly say I have quite some experience with D3.
Yes.
I wrote professionally graphics with it, so I might be able to help.
Nice. Hey, before we get into development, which it seems like we're just moving into, I know there's been a lot of talk about glossary. and I think that will be a big part of the narrative. So that's always common work that we can push through as well. But let's go back to development.
Yeah. I mean, at the moment, in the development part, the priority is to have something very, I mean, it is very important to build things that are functional as soon as possible. I would like to get that approach that is called lean development, in which you do very small things that are not think about. I am going to develop during 1 year, and at the end, I show the result to the world because normally it is a disaster. In the lean development, each week you do an iteration of the software, and it can be each week or it's 2 weeks or each month, but as soon as possible, you do an iteration that does a very small change, but you have something that is working and people can try and people can give feedback to that. So at the moment, the common simulator is not functional right now because I integrated React and a lot of things, and I let that not functional. It's not doing anything. It's you can just set up the parameters, but at the end it does not do any simulation and anything. And I think that this is the priority to make it functional again. And later on, in some way, we have to change the Python code, and there are two things to do there. To change the Python code to make that better and more adapted to what we want to do. And there is an issue there about what we would like to have. And in the other way, begin to do those data visualization graphics. And the first thing to do is to get all the events that happen in the simulation and give them to the JavaScript part, because the events of a proposal has passed and somebody exits the bonding curve should be in an activity log. So in some way we can play with that in an interactive way, and we can know how much proposals have passed in the front end. What has happened? We need to play with that, and we don't have that information. We only have a graphic of the funds that are in the pool in each time, but it's not enough. We need a lot more information that we have to get from cadCAD. And I think that this is the iteration at the moment is to make that functional again, and the next iteration is about getting that information. So maybe we can have something similar to the CV demo. Do you know the student demo in which you see how conviction is growing and decreasing and all that stuff? I would like to have that exact demo in the cadCAD simulation. But for doing that, we need to get those events. The events in which...
The cadCAD simulation, you're talking about like at the very end, right? Like here's something that...
At the very end, I would like to have a log of what had happened in that simulation. If people engaged in the community, if people selected some proposals, if a proposal passed, if people exited the bonding curve, all that events are very important for explaining later in that last page in which you explain what had happened with the community. And we don't have that. And I actually don't know how to do that, but it's in the Python part of the code, to get those events and have an array of those events to send to the front end.
but that will be something that's displayed at the very end. So it won't be part of the first like chunks that people get.
No. It is
Right.
results of the cadCAD.
Yeah. Okay. But
This
it's
is
really
like,
just like taking the funding pool graph and really expanding on it.
yes.
So
Well,
the design is that it first runs in the Python code completely, and then you just export the events to the JavaScript, and that just rebuilds as a front end. Is that the design?
yes.
Okay.
And this can be in various iterations actually, but the first step is to get cadCAD and see how to export those events in the Python code. And we saw some of them in that iteration, and later on in the next iteration we make an even better front end.
I mean, we also still have to pump out all the JavaScript graphs, right? For each parameter. Whenever someone adjusts a parameter, they get like a little chunk of data,
Yes.
a graph shows them.
Yes.
Those will all be in JavaScript, right?
Yes.
Like
All
we
the
don't
graphs, I think, are going to be in JavaScript, and we might want to enhance them with data visualization, with D3, and all that stuff. I also have a D3 book which is pretty complete, and I can share it in the group if somebody wants to join this part of the development. But
yeah, because
yeah,
I think the cadCAD attack, we might want to get the design done a little bit first and work with the designer, who is probably going to be Sergey, to figure out exactly what we want before we start pushing cadCAD. So like make sure we have a roadmap so we're not doing extra work on cadCAD before we actually know exactly what we want to pump out on the graphs is what I'd suggest.
yeah. I think that the things that I've told about getting at the point that we had before, which is make the simulation functional again. It's that first iteration that we are at the moment, and the next iteration about getting the events from cadCAD. Those two iterations are for sure the way to go until that I can foresee. The next iterations we'll see depending on how those iterations has gone and the input from the design. But I think that we have 2 weeks to work on that and on that. I think.
Okay. So on the development side, the first step is getting the simulation to work that we
Yes.
have already. And is there a way to break that up into chunks?
I mean, regain the functionality that we had, which is just showing the last graph in the cadCAD. Maybe work on some solution to make that a little bit more robust, a little bit more strong than we have at the moment. And in the next iteration, getting as much events as we can. I mean, it is not important which events they are, but to understand how we can get those events, but because we will need to get them in the future. So even if it's only when the proposal passes, it's interesting enough to know at which point in time and which proposal. But also, I would like to get when people put conviction and withdraws conviction, because then we can get exactly the same conviction voting demo that Spunet did, and put that in the last page, which it's worth that it's already done. And if only having those that information, which is grief added, that amount of tokens, that moment in time, only with having that information, we can build that graph, and it's a super. You know what is happening with the graph.
Yeah, I mean, cadCAD does that for sure. Like we just have to figure out the syntax to make it pop it out.
Yeah.
Okay, well let's. Does anyone have any more questions on design on the development side?
No, sounds good.
And
then
in the development side, I am going to put all the things that are going on and all the things that I am foreseeing in the future as issues. So don't hesitate on comment on the issues and on get involved in the development in the GitHub issues, because I think that this is the proper way to go to have a public conversation on GitHub.
Okay. And then on the design, do you have anything to? Yeah.
I actually don't know in the design part, because it's the most the thing that we didn't. I mean, it's a track that can begin at any moment, and it has not much dependencies of the other parts. One of the things that I would like, but it comes from the development part, is that if we can follow the Commons Stack guidelines on design, we can reuse that design for other things that are part of the of Commons Stack. I mean, what we have at the moment is a material design React application that has the background and the colors and the fonts of Commons Stack, and so we can later on make another application in a Commons Stack style very easily. And I don't know if this is something that we want in this way, or if we want to do something that is more engages more on fantasy, and we might want to throw the Commons Stack design and build something that it's more engaged with the narrative that we are going to build, more solarpunk thing. But I actually don't know, because I pretty suck on the design part, and I will not like to decide on those things. Just to give feedback to people who takes care of that part.
Well, okay. So I think Sergey and I will have some more meetings this week to see if he wants to take this on and what the timeline will be. But Sergey, do you have any questions about design or anything that you think we should be thinking about looking at?
So for the design part, I think most important thing here is not really the visuals of it, but the experience of the users, right? So what another important thing is, we need to, as Sam said, show something as soon as possible, and we can also iterate and get user feedbacks and iterate again, like from the beginning, like even when we create the wireframes or something like that, like very rough sketches, we can show our users that and iterate, start iterating at that moment. So the iteration process will be more loops, and then we have a better product on the end. And for the visuals, I think it is a question on whether to use the Solarpunk theme or Common Stack, but I think we can combine both. Kind of like, for example, use the Common Stack like design guidelines, and on one hand, and on the other hand, we can like draw some illustrations from like Solarpunk style illustrations or something. But that is another part. It's like a second part of the work. First one is definitely just to have this user journey, user experience like map in place first, and do the iterations on the like wireframes. Like just show something that we have as soon as possible, and then go from there. Yeah, so I think we will have like a bunch of meaning with Griff, just to structure like our user like portrait, and like what we really want the user to have in the end, and who like define our user groups, who will come to us and what will they get. Yeah, so something like that. And I think we can, for the tooling, for the design, I think the best one is Figma, of course, because especially for open source projects, because you can just share it and everybody can contribute it with comments, or even with some their thoughts on design. I think this is the best tool to use for us.
Sounds great. That sounds fantastic. So we'll attack that this week and try to give updates on everything as often as possible in the channel, and try to do full iterations. I think that sounds like a good strategy.
So I may have missed a little bit there. That information graphic, I think Sem created it. Is it Eleanor Ostrom, or what's her last name? Is it Ostrom? What is it?
Ostrom.
Ostrom. So that had those 8 different categories, or 8 different requirements, or something like that. And I found that really interesting, because it was almost like a roadmap or something, almost like how do you make a commons work? What are the things that are required for a commons to work? And maybe there's some marrying of Solarpunk and that information graphic to help people, because one of the things I'm experiencing is, what are you talking? I'd say this for a while. It's like, what are you guys talking about? And a new user comes, like, what are you talking about? And there needs to be like this structure that I can fit my brain into as soon as I come into it. And maybe it's that those 8 requirements are sort of a framework. I'm not sure that's a good idea or not a good idea, or if you've already talked about that, but that seemed pretty compact and pretty clear, and I know what it means. You have to have a boundary around your comments. That's important, and I understand that, right? So somehow Solarpunk and that graphic are helping me at least understand what you guys are talking about.
Okay, good to know. We only have 3 minutes left, so I want to just say a quick thing about cadCAD. It sounds like cadCAD's not on the to-do list this week, but if anyone, I'm giving a cadCAD. I'm going to end up giving a cadCAD workshop in Denver. So I'm going to need to figure out how cadCAD works so I can tell it to other people. So if anyone does want to hack on cadCAD with me, probably not this week, but maybe next week, I'd be totally down to be in on that.
What do you mean by that? What do you mean by hack on cadCAD?
mostly I mean actually figuring out how the hell it works. What is the syntax? Like how do we write something? How do we kick out the events that Sem is talking about? Hacking on cadCAD will be mostly trying to read their less than perfect documentation, going through solving little challenges together in like a working session, basically, and trying to figure out maybe doing one of their demos. They have these robots and marbles tutorials, doing these sorts of things and learning how cadCAD works.
I would suggest strongly that you look at an existing use case, or why don't you look at the token engineering, the TGG, when they did the hackathon for the solar use case. It's well developed. There's a lot of documentation on it, and Stephen was fairly involved in that. I was involved in that, and the reason I suggest that is that you're reducing the number of variables. So let's face it, you're not going to become an expert on cadCAD in a week. It's not going to happen. But you can get a fairly detailed understanding of a very specific use case that has been developed by people who really understand the space and spent a fair amount of time doing it. I think that might be a good way for you to figure it out, and for the people at the event to figure it out.
Yeah, I'm a little biased. I really want to try to use one of our sims, probably the Hatch sim or the bonding curve sim, I think, at Denver. But I'm not going to learn it on that. I'm going to have to learn it through a tutorial or something.
Fair enough.
Okay, but so that's our show. Where do we want to go from here? Sounds like we're going to be working in the GitHub, and maybe we can. I'll throw a link to the GitHub in our Telegram chat, which is the other main place where we're working on things. Sem, do you have much time to hack on this week?
Yes, during this week, I want to finish that first iteration on completing the give back the functionality that we had before, and check it out a little bit, how the hats part can be included in some way. Maybe I help you on that, on understanding cadCAD, because I will need to understand it too. So for the next iteration, I already know how everything works. But yeah, for this week, I think that the most important thing of the iteration is making that functional again.
Does anyone else have time to throw into that this week?
Well, I'm not really sure. I might. So my suggestion is that whoever starts just drops a line in the chat or something saying, I'm going to work on this. This also helps communication going. I have a question though. Did I understand correctly? So Sam explained how the events are meant to be going into the front end, but it's cadCAD who is generating these events, and we don't know yet how to get to those events.
Mm-hmm.
Is that okay? Cool.
Yes,
Just
and the thing
where we are.
Yeah, the thing is that we don't have a long-term plan yet, because there are still a lot of things that we don't know. So we are going to iterate little by little and see where it goes.
Yeah, in the end, the D3 library. I mean, that's just the last screen where we got to pull from cadCAD. So all the other screens will be hopefully using the D3 library and be making graphs on JavaScript, which generally we don't have any technical hurdles on. So there's definitely a lot of progress that can be made. while we figure out the hurdle of how do we push it. So, but yeah, okay, cool, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out. I'm thank you, Juliet, for taking such great notes. And this video was live streamed just like the last one, so I'll post both of those in the channel after this. Let's do closing round. Thank you guys for coming. I'll pass it to Ravi.
I'm
closing round, final.
Yeah, just looking forward to the user interfaces and stuff, Sergio. I'm looking forward to seeing how I can help you with any design work. Or I don't have much technical experience itself, but I have some fair experience auditing UX and creating UX UI. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that very much. And documentation. I think I'm gonna try to give it a shot. Time is a bit of a premium right now, but I will try my best to do that. And I pass it on to Jay.
Thank you. I'll see you guys in Denver. I think I'm going to be in Denver in the next couple. When is, I don't know, 3 weeks from now or so. So hopefully we can hack on something somewhere. I always go to these hackathons and I never hack, but we'll see. I'll pass it on to Sam.
It is so nice to have all that people showing up each week, and it is it is super cool to have that community project. I would like to have. I mean, in some way, it is getting more professional, the project, because now there are funds, and I want to make that project as much clean and good as possible. And at the same time, it's still a community project that we have to have a lot of fun with that, right? And have the community engaged in it. So please, if you have any doubts or for sure any suggestion or anything that you want to hack on and build on top of it, please get engaged and let's build that together. And I pass it on Fabio.
All right. Thanks for the very good meeting. When I first got to know Common Stack, maybe a couple of weeks ago, I was totally lost. Who is doing what, and what needs to be done, and what is the structure of the project? I also was not clear, is this just a Python binary or something? And now I'm getting to grips what the project is about and who is doing what. It's taking familiar structures. I can say I have done exactly that a couple of years ago, 2 years ago, with the Swarm project, where a backend generated events and the front end was showing them as nodes in a D3 graph. So I can help pretty much there. And it just also encourage everyone to express specifically what is needed, who is needed, what roles, what work is. For example, as a new guy, I usually don't want to make too many suggestions. Hey, you should use the stories, or you should write a storyboard, or you should do this, or you should that. I just try to listen first and try to understand what are the needs. But if some, for example, there is the wish that there is some kind of, I don't want to say project management, but at least structuring the development. I've done some work there as well. So please just express what are the needs, and so that not only me but everyone else might recognize, oh, yeah, I can do that, and contribute if needed. That's what I wanted to say. Thanks. Oh, and is Sergey maybe? Yes.
Yeah, thanks. It was nice meeting you all. And the thing is, I'm actually flying to Budapest on Friday, and we'll be back on Wednesday. So during that time, I won't be able to produce something. But afterwards, I'm not sure about the roadmap and like timeline of the project. And maybe Griff can brief me on that.
Can you just say, well, okay, timeline of the project on design? It's definitely as soon as possible. We have a lot of things working on the development side that are MVP technical challenges, so we can be working in parallel. So it's not like the end of the world if we can't get started right away. But what can you say your days again? You're leaving tomorrow?
So I'm leaving on Friday, and we'll be back on Wednesday.
Okay.
Yeah. So
well, yeah.
Wednesday 29th.
Okay. Yeah, and we can talk offline about some other the rest of the details too.
Okay.
I think the last person, Sergey, sorry, don't want to cut you off on your checkout.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I just wanted to say thank you to all of you, and nice to meet you all. I think who else? Juliet, I think.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't really have anything more to add. Thanks for letting me listen in.
Cool.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you.